Qtronman made a video asking how a certain situation would work if anarchy was in effect, and had two video responses, one from Eugene and one from Sean. The thrust of Eugene's response, I believe, was that he didn't have to answer the question because it was one of these apocalyptic sorts of things that hypothesized everything had gone wrong and was so ridiculous that he didn't have to answer it. Well, my problem is I thought the question was very reasonable. It was not apocalyptic by my sense. It hypothesized a very simple situation which would be very likely to occur. Namely that groups with a certain identity would cluster together in housing and in other manners and would have disagreements with others who, due to their identity, cluster together. So the question really becomes, you don't just have to get to label it as being apocalyptic or unreasonable. You need to discuss whether it's unreasonable or not, and that is what Sean attempted to do in his video. In Sean's video, he says things roughly to the effect that you have to consider what's likely or unlikely, and apparently attributes the propagation of religion to government, and there's no question that there has been some of that. There has been a lot of state oppression of religion. But if you get a book like The History of God by Karen Armstrong, which I've mentioned in other videos, the history of religion and man's relation to it is much more complex than government and goes back much farther than government. And while in America we might say, that religion, that people would just kind of give it up if we had anarchy. I just don't see that being the case. Particularly when you go ahead and remove government. That's one of the ways people identify themselves, that they have a sense of identity. It's going to be through their nation, through their religion, through their race or something. And the idea that everybody is just all of a sudden going to have a homogeneous world where we're all mixed together, I don't know. I would seem to think that if you take away nationalism, people are going to find other things that are characteristic that give them an identity. And I think religion will probably be one of them. Sean asked, why would you have ignorance when people could learn? If we had an environment where freedom was... Well, remember in the Middle Ages, the Muslims were the scientific, intellectual ones. And they have gone backwards when their religion was threatened. Really what I see happening here is that anarchists generally don't take a look at the way people actually behave. Now, we actually have another issue, which I hope to get to at some point. If we're going to have anarchy, we're not only going to have to address what it is, but how to get there. And in a previous video, or previous comment of mine, I said something to the effect, I'm surprised that people continue to wonder why people would discriminate in businesses, because it's already happened. We've already seen it. Somebody posted, well, when did that happen? When the United States in the 50s and earlier, and a lot of it in the late 1800s as well against other nationalities. Then somebody said, well, that was a long time ago, we're different now. So I guess that really is an admission, if people agree to that there was a point at which anarchy was not a reasonable thing to consider, but over time it has been. So I guess we'd also get that for different parts of the world we have different opportunity or likelihoods of things occurring. What we really have to do is discuss how do we get from here to there. And the only video that I have seen, and I realize that I have not done an exhaustive search, was one by StephBot of how we get from here to there. And the recommendations in it are certainly not followed by people who make videos on YouTube. Probably it's the people who are not on YouTube or making videos that are actually following his advice. I'm going to make some discussions about that in the future. So what we seem to have is Qtronman asking a question, and the first issue is an apocalyptic scenario he has devised. And the answer is, I don't think it's slightly apocalyptic. I think it is highly likely, to the point of virtual certainty. Certainly as good as somebody else saying, well, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think based on the behavior of people that we have observed throughout history, that the government is made of people. We've seen these types of behavior, and I don't know that we even have to go as far as government to get there. So I believe it's a legitimate question. And just saying it isn't doesn't make it so. I think it's very realistic. I think that's about all I have for the moment.